Good afternoon. It is just exactly 12 o'clock. It's May 27th, 2026. And this is the House Appropriations Committee. And we are going to hear briefly about a bill that has come back to the Senate, from the Senate, and do a straw poll on it. It is H915. It's posted on our committee page. The fiscal notice has been posted. This is still being called the bottle bill, but it's the manufacturer's whatever bill. So we have financial responsibility. I knew there was a better name for it. So anyway, Michael Brady, welcome. Tell us what we need to know at some sort of high level of what's different.
With regard to appropriations or with regard for the entire bill?
Probably we want to hear a little bit about the whole bill and then certainly the appropriations. And then we have Ted with us from Joint Fiscal to talk about the specifics of the money.
Well, sorry for the delay. My iPad isn't loading your committee website. And that happens sometimes and I have to reload. So what changed? I think the major change that you are going to hear about is that the handling fee that manufacturers and distributors pay to those retail stores and redemption centers, that has increased. In the House passed version, only the handling fee for non-commingled containers was increased from 4 to 5 cents. In the Senate proposal, the handling fee for commingled is increased from 3.5 to 4.5. Now, those fees are only in place until the Extended Producer Responsibility Organization sets up, and that's in March 1 of 2029. And you didn't have the March 1, 2029 date in the House passed. You had 90 days after A&R approved the plan. But manufacturers, distributors wanted a set date.
Okay.
Also, the handling fee for 1 year, once the Producer Responsibility Organization is set up, that will continue from March 1, 2029 to July 1, 2030, and it will be 4.5 cents for any container. So that is the major change. It also affects DLL because the handling fee for liquor bottles increases as well. And Ted will tell you what the financial impact of that is. The grants, the money being transferred from the Clean Water Fund to the Waste Management Assistance Fund, that remains the same. The only change in that language is that there was a cap added because the Solid Waste Management Assistance account, where the money is coming from for these grants over 4 fiscal years.
Right.
That Solid Waste Management Assistance account has more revenue in it than just this transfer. And so there are interested parties who don't want these grants to be dipped into the revenue that they lay claim to. It's your swimmies. It's like they
want their own money.
They get their money from that account and they don't want A&R to be like, oh, we'll give another $500,000. It's going to be capped at the transferred amount.
Okay.
Those are the big money issues. So the handling fee is not a state revenue issue. It's between the manufacturers and distributors and their points of redemption. The transfer from the Clean Water Fund is the same as what passed the House. The cap is just a clarifying and, basically control.
So there's not, if I buy a bottle or a can of soda or whatever, the fee isn't going up from the 5 cents it is.
The deposit is not going up.
Deposit isn't going up.
Deposit is not going up.
Okay, because there were newspaper articles that seemed to imply that it was all going to cost us more. It was going to go up. But that's.
Well, I would not. The manufacturers pass on their costs to the customers. This is an increased cost that manufacturers and distributors will incur. It's been estimated that it will be $1.8 million in additional money over the next 4 to 5 years. And paid for by the manufacturers. Well, when you talk to the advocates, they say that the distributors will pay that. It's really the first person that collects the deposit is the one that's going to be on the hook. That may be some manufacturers, but it's likely for the larger beverage manufacturers, it's going to be the distributor because this distributor is the one that's collecting the deposit the first time. So that's going to be your local distributors. It's going to be the people that are distributing beer, soda, other covered drinks. They will be paying that.
Okay, but the deposit is not changing.
The deposit is
5 cents
not
is
changing.
still the 5 cents and all the rest of it. Okay.
There's no automatic escalator.
Yeah.
There's no A&R gets to decide that they are going to raise it.
Okay.
The only way that that deposit gets increased is that A&R reports back to you that they think the deposit needs to increase in order to improve retention rates.
Any questions for Mike at this point? Maybe we get tied up and talk about the fiscal note. Don't leave the room, but thank you. So the fiscal note is on here too. Is it the same one we saw before?
No, the fiscal note. Joint fiscal office. No, the fiscal note is reflective of the Senate Natural Resources and
Okay.
Energy Committee report where all of the changes that micrograding went through appear. I'm going to have the fiscal note on behind me.
I don't have the fiscal note for you. I printed it up and it was the fiscal note for S64. Do we have the
Oh.
note for 915?
I didn't.
Yeah, it's there.
No, it's not posted, right?
Refresh the.
Refresh the page, okay. There it is. Okay, that looks like the right fiscal note.
Yes, there are differences in fiscal magnitude between a 64.
Yes. there are.
Yeah.
So I see. You'll be back with us later today.
Exactly. So I am primarily, I will leave the fiscal note up here for primarily as window dressing. There are three main fiscal impacts from changes the Senate made. First, talking about the increase in handling fee for liquor bottles. Since DLL essentially operates as its own PRO, it is the one that's paying handling fees to points of redemption. And so the increase in their handling cost for liquor bottles from 3.5 to 4.5 cents estimated to cost about $35,000 more per year. And right, since that is an additional cost, there is a chance that there would be a little bit less of a transfer from the Liquor Control Enterprise Fund in future fiscal years compared to if the handling fee didn't increase. But given all the other moving parts within the enterprise fund, it might not even be noticeable.
Never noticed, right? Yeah, Tom?
At what point is something de minimis?
It depends on the size of the fund.
So every year they give $20 million or so, would a person be able to say that $35,000 and that is de minimis?
It is right on the line. I think it was kind of a professional judgment call as to whether to call that one a minimal increase in administrative costs versus putting the specific number on it. Right, it is like right de minimis and thinking about it in the education fund is a much larger number than the general fund is a much larger number than special funds. And so this one, given that the transfer is $20 million and the revenue, I don't have it off the top of my head, is much more than that, 35 million in the context of that, pretty small.
Well, I asked that specifically because even with the $1.8 million to other distributors or manufacturers, it's over 3 or 4 years. Is that right? It's a total cost over 3 or 4 years.
Between July 1, 2026 and July 1, 2030.
So 4 years at 1.8 million, I mean, is that like a penny per can of soda? You know, I don't know how they break down how many cans of sodas are sold. I'm sure there's more than 1.8 million cans. So to me, that's a de minimis overall, breakdown to what it's going to cost the consumer, however they try to reclaim those costs. But for the government here, or for our department taking care of it, I mean, $35,000 seems to be chump change de minimis, in the scheme of things.
Yeah, and the other bit of context that may be helpful here is that DLL gets to retain the unclaimed deposits on liquor bottles, and that largely pays for the administration of the system. And even by increasing their cost by 35,000, you're still kind of within that relationship between the money they're claiming or they're receiving from unclaimed bottle deposits, and the amount they're spending on the redemption
That's only on the
system.
liquor bottle.
Only for liquor bottles, correct. Unclaimed beverage container deposits for other containers, those are S cheats and remitted to the Clean Water Fund.
Thank you.
Wayne,
So you said, DLL's keeping the sheets, essentially that's the sheets, the unclaimed money. So that was going to the Clean Water Fund. That some change?
No. So for liquor bottles, those are managed by DLL and they're in conjunction with their overall management and control of liquor sales. For non-liquor bottles, so soda, beer, those things, those are still staying outside of DLL. And so the unclaimed beverage container deposits are staying as S sheets and still being a part of the Clean Water Fund. The unclaimed liquor bottle deposits are being held on by DLL, and there's no change from current law in that system. So that's point number one. Point number two is there is let's see if I can find it. So there's here. So if you'll remember from when I was here a long time ago talking about this bill, there were two paths essentially for the system. One is that the deposit initiators, the manufacturers and distributors, form their own producer responsibility organization. That is kind of, seems like the ideal solution, in which case A&R costs, A&R would be able to essentially bill the PRO and get reimbursement for their oversight costs of that system. And that would happen as part of the budget process. This is the same as the bill as it came over from the House. And that magnitude is quite small. Currently, A&R and their oversight of the current system, it's about 0.1 FTE. It is 1 FTE or 0.1 FTE. There's a second path in which the deposit initiators don't form the PRO and A&R has to fulfill that role as the PRO in the system. When this bill was passed by the House, there was an additional penalty. It's called a recycling market development assessment of 10%. And this penalty was designed to convince the manufacturers and distributors that they should establish the PRO rather than having A&R do it. The Senate increased that 10% penalty to 25%. And so provides a greater incentive for manufacturers and distributors to form their PRO. So really looking at the first universe in which A&R is simply providing oversight in a much lower capacity, but do have to flag that if A&R is serving as the PRO, their costs within the system, would be multiple FTEs, paying out handling fees much larger.
you're spilling water. So,
Feels like light years since we talked about this. And I'm wondering, like, if the PRO did form the if the manufacturers form the PRO, or even if they didn't, wouldn't they pass that on to the consumer? I mean, I just, and is it 25%? I just don't know how that affects a manufacturer. And whether, how this would affect consumer over, a year's time.
It's a good question. Putting on my principles or, economic class hat for a second, right? The ability of manufacturers and their ability to pass on costs to the consumer depends on the elasticity, right? The like how sensitive consumers are to the price of goods.
Yeah.
So knowing how much producers or distributors are going to eat those costs versus passing them on to consumers, really hard to know for sure. I think, testimony certainly from organizations for manufacturing distributors saying that is like a straight pass through. But, given if consumers are more price sensitive and, it's hard to tell, maybe they eat some of those costs.
Lynn, and then Dave.
I'm not sure if you're the one to answer this, it might be the Ledge Council, but one of the issues that came up with the bottle bill in the most recent past is that we have gone to single source recycling, and a lot of our waste management has gone into investing a lot of money in that process, which would probably reduce the need for these redemption centers. Did any of this come into play in this particular bill? I know it was discussed a couple of years ago when we started looking at the bottle bill again. Is that for Mike O'Grady rather than you?
Yeah, I think, are you asking specifically how much testimony committees got on the differences?
And was it considered? Would that be something that would be simpler, cheaper, or less involved and just, redemption centers are, I'm not sure they're the most economic development tool we have in our toolbox,
Yeah, so I know there's certainly some testimony and debate on that subject in Senate Finance. I would defer to others who spent more, as a fiscal analyst, I'm more parachute in the money committees sometimes, so I'm not always part of the conversation, but
All that's already been vetted, so all we're doing is looking at the changes. So the whole discussion of whether it should be and the producer organization, all that's already gone through the House and the Senate, and we're really just looking at the changes now. So that's where we are. Unless some of this is changes that we haven't talked about.
No,
Okay.
I can.
Okay.
So the discussion and debate in the past was because the scope of the bottle bill was increased and it would have basically effectively taken away from the single stream recycling market supply that they relied on in order to operate effectively. In fact, that they had bonded for a MRF facility based on that. And if you had shrunk their supply, they would have lost money on that MRF. You're not changing the scope of the bottle bill. It is only those containers that are subject to redemption today. Redemption rates are 72%. We're hoping to get it to 80 in the next few years. That's not going to markedly impact single stream the way that the prior bill completely expanded the scope of the bottle bill. Would have included everything effectively, including like pickle jars. And so, as long as it was marketed for drinking, there are some pickle jars that are marketed. And so that is not an issue here. It's just the existing universe of products. How that cost gets passed on. Every EPR program, there's always that discussion. Sometimes you see an increase in the cost, sometimes, as Ted was talking about, the elasticity pricing. When you did cover electronic pricing, manufacturers claim that TVs in Vermont are going to be hundreds of dollars more. They're actually hundreds of dollars less now because of the market and the elasticity in the market. And so it's hard to say how it's going to affect price. I don't think it's going to affect the single stream market much. Thank you.
Okay, Dave had a question and then Wayne.
That 1.8 million spread over several years, is it fair to assume that tourists will pay their share of that, and is that significant?
So starts to get outside of the realm of where JFO does a lot of analysis. So that is that figure and is referring to the increase in handling fees, which are being paid by deposit initiators directly to points of redemption. And so it's operating outside of kind of state money systems and streams. And so, I mean, right, like there are certainly bottles are being purchased by a wide range of consumers, and recognizing that Vermont's a tourist state, sure, it's like, it's certainly anyone who's buying a container is implicated in that system. And to what extent it is directly a relationship between manufacturers and distributors and handling centers, how much manufacturers and distributors are passing those costs on the consumer, it's just really hard to know.
My question is next for the Ledge Council, where is there is a statutory requirement for the Clean Water Fund for how much is in there or how much is supposed to go in there on an annual basis?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Statutory requirement on the Clean Water Fund.
Mhm.
Will this impact our ability to meet that statutory requirement?
I don't believe so, and Ted can correct my numbers if I'm wrong, but generally the Clean Water Fund gets around $40 million a year. And so over 4 years, that's $160 million, and what you're taking out of it is $3.5 billion. And so I don't think EPA will have an issue with that.
So it's an EPA issue of statute, because my understanding is like 50 million a year was like a target or some sort.
Yes.
We haven't been spending that though.
No, I mean,
Right.
there's the capital money too, which I don't include as part of the Clean Water Fund, but the Clean Water Board recommends its use of, and that pumps it up to around $50 million a year.
So we're spending what the EPA is requiring us to do.
Right, so for TMDLs, the Clean Water Act requires you to basically have insurance that you can implement the TMDL over the time frame of the TMDL. And one of the things that EPA did in they literally issue you a report card. Their report card initially said you didn't have enough money to ensure that TMDL will be implemented. So that's why you came up with the Clean Water Fund. That's why you put the money in it that you did, and EPA gave you a passing grade for that.
So that fund, say it's 40, 50 million dollars is supposed to be in that. That doesn't mean you can't spend it down, but you have to keep replacing it to that level.
You have to have a consistent source of funding to ensure that the TMDL is implemented over time.
That's the insurance policies, that fund.
I'm good.
Okay, I saw the hand. Other questions? Is there more that you want to let us know about?
There's one final tiny piece. It is let's go find it. There is an existing PRO for household hazardous waste products, and that is being A&R has the lucky responsibility of implementing that. And there is existing legislation that allowed them to charge the 10% penalty to serve as the PRO, but the language is the same, where their costs for administration and oversight would be part of the annual budget process. You get a chance to review it, and then they would get reimbursed by the manufacturers of the household hazardous waste products. The bill adds language that would allow, if there are additional plans for management of these waste products, kind of outside of A&R serving as the PRO with different manufacturers, there's language that would allow them to receive compensation for their oversight of those additional plans.
That's it. Okay. Any other questions? So in terms of new money that we need to think about, is because they increased the percentages, which basically affects DLL. It's kind of more of a revenue thing than although it could affect the general fund a little bit if that 35,000 doesn't come from DLL. that's kind of where the nexus is with us, or is there anything else? I'm looking at both of them.
But the only state revenue is the, and spending is the DLL, the change, only change
Right,
is the DLL.
okay.
Yep. I will, yes, I think the second part is the penalty change from 10% to 25% if A&R serves as the
Yeah.
PRO for these containers. It's more flagging, I think, by increasing the penalty to 25%. It's much more likely that manufacturers and distributors will serve as the PRO. So you're more looking at a, minimal oversight of the system for A&R, but it's something to keep in mind that, when it gets stood up and A&R is the one who is the PRO and you see it in their budget request and you're like, oh, this is, multiple millions of dollars, not to be surprised
Right,
that that's coming down the road. But it's unclear until
yeah,
we get to that future.
okay. Any other questions? Have other committees voted on this today? And
Environment did, House Ways and Means was supposed to this morning, but I don't know if they actually did.
okay, do you know the vote count in environment?
It's 10.
Okay. Okay. Great. So this is straw poll. And I would entertain a motion if there's no other questions to support H 915 as whatever.
So
Thank you. Is there a second?
So
Thank you, Tom. Any other conversations? And reporter will be Trevor. And we're all here. Thank you all for coming back. Lynn,
Does Trevor have a record of what we voted the last time? Did we get it? Didn't we?
we vote yes. I can, if you give me a second, I can find, I don't know who did what, but I can tell you what the vote count was. That seems really slow today.
I know.
I was in one room in the building and I didn't even have any internet. I couldn't,
yeah.
my computer.
That way.
Got
Directly into
one
the
session.
air conditioning.
Is Mercury and retrograde or something?
I don't know, at least on my devices, it's been mediocre all year.
Well, it's been pretty fast for me on my computer, but I don't have a choice to not sell on the computer. It's just going slowly. I'm working my way into it. Maybe Autumn will get it.
I
faster
have
than I do.
indicated that we voted 8-3-0. Lynn, Wayne, and Lori voted against it.
That's what I remember.
Okay, great. Somebody found it. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's where we were.
My concern all along has been the Clean Water Fund and
Yeah.
how slowly we're getting those wastewater treatment systems
Right.
online, right?
Which this, I don't believe will impact in the least.
Well,
That's a separate issue of why things aren't getting,
my understanding is not the money that's holding things up.
that's right. It's not about the money in that case. Yep. And we also have had communities that don't vote to do what they need to do. So that's a whole other conversation.
Permitting problem.
Actually, it's permission problems in a lot of cases. All right, we have a motion and a second. This is a straw poll, but it will be announced on the floor. So Trevor, why don't we, we're ready to go.
President Bloomley,
Yes.
President Dickinson,
No.
President Peltis,
Yes.
President Kaczynska. Yes. President Roche.
No.
President Rowicki,
Yes.
President Nigro,
Yes.
President Squirrel, yes. Representative Stevens.
Yes.
Representative Yakavoni,
Yes,
President Shy.
Yes,
It's 9-0.
920, and Trevor will be the reporter. Thank you. Thank you, Ted. Ted, we'll see you again. Yes. 2:30, we have the S64 bill. I gave Autumn a whole list of other things that may be coming in where we may be needing to do this. Sorry, this was really fast. Thank you all for responding so quickly. This is where we are at the end of session. The faster we get through this, the faster we get out of here. So keep your phones nearby and